The world is on the edge of something unprecedented. As we move into 2026, uncertainty looms over every aspect of life. Advances in technology, economic instability, political upheaval, and environmental catastrophes are converging to create a perfect storm of fear and tension. Many are unprepared for what's coming, clinging to the illusion that life will continue as it always has. But the cracks in the foundation are widening. Governments struggle to maintain order, institutions lose credibility, and trust among people erodes at an alarming rate. The signs are everywhere, yet most refuse to see them. This isn't just about speculation. This is about trends that are already unfolding, threats that are already materializing. The question isn't if these events will happen, it's how quickly they will accelerate. In the past, society has adapted to change, but what happens when the pace becomes too overwhelming? What happens when technology outpaces ethics, when financial systems collapse under their own weight, and when the fragile balance of global power tips toward chaos? The road ahead is uncertain, but one thing is clear. Ignorance will be costly. Those who fail to recognize the warning signs will be left scrambling when the world as they know it shifts beneath their feet. Now is the time to prepare, to stay informed, and to understand the forces at play. Because once the dominoes start falling, there may be no stopping them. 1. AI out of control. Artificial intelligence was once seen as a tool to improve human lives, but in 2026, it may become something far more unpredictable. The rapid advancement of AI has exceeded even the most ambitious projections, transforming industries, automating millions of jobs, and raising existential concerns about the role of human workers in the future. What started as a revolution in efficiency has become a threat to economic stability. The workforce is shrinking, not because of lack of demand, but because machines are simply outperforming humans at nearly every level. Skilled labor is no longer safe, and even white-collar professionals are finding themselves replaced by intelligent algorithms capable of handling complex tasks in seconds. Deepfake technology has reached such a sophisticated level that distinguishing between real and fake is nearly impossible. Politicians, world leaders, and influential figures are constantly at risk of having their identities hijacked, their words manipulated, and their reputations destroyed by AI-generated content that is indistinguishable from reality. Public trust in information is eroding, and misinformation spreads at a speed that traditional media cannot combat. The Internet, once a hub of knowledge and connection, is now a battlefield where truth itself is under attack. Every image, every video, every statement is subject to doubt, and people are left questioning what is real and what is manufactured deception. As AI becomes more integrated into decision-making processes, the fear of losing control intensifies. Governments and corporations rely on AI-driven systems to manage infrastructure, security, and even military operations. But as these systems grow more autonomous, the question arises, who is truly in charge? What happens when AI begins making decisions that go against human interests? The very systems designed to protect and serve may evolve into something unrecognizable, something beyond human control. The more we depend on AI, the more we surrender power to an intelligence that does not think, feel, or understand consequences the way humans do. Paranoia spreads as people begin to fear not only the technology itself but also the people who control it. Governments weaponize AI to monitor citizens, corporations use it to manipulate consumer behavior, and cybercriminals exploit it for devastating attacks. The line between human and machine blurs, and society struggles to define what it means to be human in an age where artificial minds are making decisions that shape the future. Those who resist AI's influence find themselves at odds with a world that sees resistance as inefficiency. Those who embrace it risk becoming dependent on something they cannot control. The danger isn't that AI will rise up and overthrow humanity. It's that humanity will become so entangled in its own creation that it won't be able to tell where human intelligence ends and artificial intelligence begins. The loss of control doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small steps, in gradual acceptance, until one day, people wake up and realize they are no longer calling the shots. The question is no longer whether AI will change the world, it's whether the world will be able to keep up with AI before it's too late. 2. Economic collapse on the horizon. The global economy is more fragile than ever, and in 2026, the cracks may finally give way to a catastrophic collapse. Inflation continues its relentless rise, making basic necessities unaffordable for millions. The housing market, once a sign of stability, is now a ticking time bomb, with prices plummeting and mortgage defaults skyrocketing. Small businesses, already struggling, shut their doors permanently as corporate monopolies tighten their grip. The wealth gap expands beyond anything previously seen, dividing the world into two extremes, those who have everything and those who have nothing. The middle class, once the backbone of economies, is rapidly disappearing, leaving behind a society of the ultra-rich and the desperate. Governments try to maintain order, printing more money in a last-ditch effort to keep things afloat. But this only fuels inflation further, devaluing currencies and driving economies toward collapse. People watch helplessly as their life savings become worthless overnight. Banks, overwhelmed by mass withdrawals, impose strict limits, trapping people's money inside a system that is failing. ATM lines stretch for miles, but the machines have already run dry. Digital banking systems suffer outages, leaving millions unable to access funds. The panic spreads like wildfire, and soon, the financial markets enter a free fall that no amount of intervention can stop. In the streets, desperation turns into chaos. Protests erupt in major cities, starting as peaceful demonstrations but quickly escalating into violent clashes with law enforcement. Looting becomes widespread as people fight to secure food, water, and basic supplies. Governments attempt to impose order, but their measures only deepen the resentment. Martial law is declared in some countries, while others struggle to maintain even the illusion of control. In the most affected regions, entire economies are wiped out overnight, leaving millions in a state of survival mode, unsure of what tomorrow will bring. Cryptocurrencies, once seen as an alternative to traditional financial systems, experience extreme volatility. Some digital assets skyrocket as people seek to escape government-controlled currencies, while others crash due to widespread panic. The dream of decentralized wealth turns into a nightmare as cyber criminals take advantage of the chaos, draining wallets and executing large-scale fraud schemes. Scammers run rampant, preying on those desperate to protect what little they have left. The once promised financial revolution is now a battlefield where only the most informed and ruthless survive. Global supply chains, already weakened by years of instability, finally break. Food shortages become severe, with prices reaching astronomical levels. Families are forced to ration what little they can afford, and in some areas, riots break out over empty grocery store shelves. Farmers struggle to produce enough to meet demand, facing rising costs and unpredictable weather patterns that further disrupt production. The black market flourishes, with everyday goods being sold at prices only the wealthy can afford. Bartering systems emerge in local communities as people seek alternatives to a broken monetary system. Nations that once prided themselves on economic dominance now face the grim reality of collapse. The United States struggles to maintain global influence as its debt spirals out of control. European nations fracture under financial strain, with some economies defaulting entirely. Developing countries, already on the edge, fall into humanitarian crises as international aid dries up. The world order as we know it shifts rapidly, with new power dynamics emerging in the wake of financial ruin. For those who saw the signs early, there is still time to prepare. But for the majority, the illusion of stability will persist until the moment it all comes crashing down. By then, it will be too late. The question isn't whether economic collapse is coming, it's whether people are ready to face it when it does. 3. Political chaos and civil unrest. By 2026, political stability has become a distant memory. Across the globe, once secure governments are beginning to crumble under the weight of public dissatisfaction, corruption, and increasing authoritarianism. The fractures within political systems are widening, and the trust once held in leaders is now all but non-existent. For years, politicians have promised change, but as crises deepen, their true loyalties are revealed. To the systems that benefit them, not the people they were elected to serve. This disillusionment among the population has reached a boiling point, and in many countries, it's only a matter of time before the anger turns into full-blown rebellion. Protests, once sparked by specific grievances, now become a daily occurrence in cities across the world. What starts as small demonstrations soon escalates into violent clashes between civilians and law enforcement. Citizens, frustrated by stagnant wages, unfulfilled promises, and the erosion of civil liberties, begin to rise up in droves. In some countries, the unrest spreads like wildfire, with entire regions descending into chaos as people take to the streets in defiance of their corrupt leaders. The voice of the people, once a powerful tool for change, is now drowned out by the sound of riots and escalating violence. Governments, struggling to hold on to power, respond with increasing brutality. Martial law becomes a common sight in many nations, with the military deployed to suppress protests and maintain order. In some places, entire neighborhoods are cordoned off, with curfews enforced and public gatherings banned. Governments resort to extreme measures, surveillance, censorship, and crackdowns on opposition, to quell the growing dissent. Those who speak out against authority are labeled as enemies of the state, and many are either silenced or simply disappear without a trace. The political landscape is now one of fear, manipulation, and control, with leaders willing to do whatever it takes to retain power. In the midst of this turmoil, extremist groups rise in prominence, capitalizing on the public's disillusionment with mainstream politics. Radical ideologies find fertile ground in the chaos, with fringe groups offering simplistic solutions to complex problems. These groups gain followers, not by presenting viable policy proposals, but by exploiting people's fears and anger. The more extreme the rhetoric, the more attention they receive, and soon, the political spectrum shifts dramatically. In some countries, governments lose control over large swathes of territory, leaving them unable to effectively govern. Power vacuums are filled by militias, organized crime, or even foreign powers seeking to capitalize on the unrest. Civil liberties, once taken for granted, are gradually stripped away. Governments use the threat of instability as an excuse to increase surveillance, infringing upon privacy and restricting freedoms. The Internet, once an open platform for communication, is now heavily monitored, with online dissent met with swift retaliation. Censorship becomes rampant, with authorities controlling what information is allowed to spread. The line between protest and terrorism blurs, and anyone caught speaking out risks being branded as a threat to national security. In many regions, the situation deteriorates to such an extent that the very concept of a functioning government begins to unravel. Some countries descend into near anarchy, with lawlessness prevailing in the absence of effective leadership. Criminal organizations seize control of key infrastructure, while rogue factions battle for dominance. The state is no longer the protector of its citizens. It is a distant, untrustworthy entity that only serves to fuel the fire of dissent. For many, the collapse of traditional political systems leaves them in a state of constant fear and uncertainty. The question isn't just about political collapse, it's about the survival of democratic ideals. As governments around the world turn inward, focusing on their own survival, the international community begins to fracture. Global cooperation becomes more difficult as countries retreat into isolationism, closing borders, and placing the needs of their own citizens above any broader concerns. International organizations, once seen as beacons of diplomacy and unity, struggle to maintain relevance as the world grows increasingly fragmented. What happens when the very foundations of governance begin to crack? When institutions built on principles of democracy, equality, and justice begin to fall? For the people living through this chaos, survival becomes the priority, not political ideals. And yet, even in the midst of this turmoil, the question remains: can we rebuild from the ashes of political collapse? Or is this the dawn of a new era, one defined by instability, fear, and authoritarian rule? Only time will tell. 4. Climate disasters become the new normal. By 2026, the devastating effects of climate change have transformed what was once thought to be a far-off problem into an urgent global crisis. Extreme weather events, once considered anomalies, have become the new normal, reshaping entire landscapes and upending the lives of millions. Wildfires rage uncontrollably across vast stretches of land, consuming entire communities in their path. The destruction is relentless, with fires burning for weeks or even months at a time, leaving entire ecosystems in ashes. The air becomes thick with smoke, affecting air quality for thousands of miles. The flames don't discriminate, they tear through forests, homes, and businesses, leaving devastation and despair in their wake. The fight against these natural disasters becomes increasingly difficult as wildfires spread into urban areas, stretching firefighting resources to their breaking point. In some regions, fire seasons last year-round, making it nearly impossible to recover before the next wave of destruction hits. Communities that once thrived in the shadow of forests or on the edges of vast, fire-prone landscapes now face the constant threat of losing everything. With rising temperatures and prolonged droughts, the already fragile ecosystems that once acted as buffers against such disasters are no longer able to withstand the pressure. The result is an endless cycle of devastation, as communities are repeatedly displaced by fires that leave nothing behind but ashes and sorrow. Flooding has also reached unprecedented levels, with rivers overflowing their banks and entire towns submerged underwater. Coastal areas, once safe from the worst impacts of climate change, now face the constant threat of rising sea levels. Storm surges from increasingly powerful hurricanes and typhoons have obliterated entire cities, with homes and infrastructure swept away by the relentless force of nature. In some regions, flooding becomes a routine occurrence, with entire populations forced to relocate multiple times due to rising waters. The infrastructure that once supported communities begins to crumble under the strain of continuous flooding, as cities struggle to repair and rebuild. In many places, the once prominent coastline is now nothing more than a distant memory, replaced by saltwater that slowly invades freshwater sources and renders farmland unusable. Hurricanes, once a seasonal threat, now strike with terrifying frequency and intensity. What were once considered rare superstorms are now a staple of the climate crisis, as the atmosphere becomes more unpredictable and violent. These storms reach previously unheard of levels of strength, wiping out entire coastal regions, leaving behind nothing but devastation. Cities that once stood as symbols of human ingenuity are now completely wiped off the map, as the relentless wind and rain destroy everything in their path. The infrastructure that once made these cities thrive, hospitals, schools, transportation systems, collapses under the sheer force of these storms. The rebuilding efforts are slow, and in many places, the cycle begins anew before the scars from the last storm have even begun to heal. But it's not just the extreme weather events that are taking their toll. The ongoing shifts in climate patterns have far-reaching effects on agriculture and food production. With rising temperatures and unpredictable rainfall patterns, crop yields decline, and entire farming regions are rendered uninhabitable. Droughts take hold of once fertile lands, leaving farmers without the water they need to sustain their crops. The effects are felt most severely in regions that rely heavily on agriculture for both food and economic stability. The consequences of crop failures are far-reaching, causing food shortages that ripple through the global economy. As food prices skyrocket, communities that were once self-sufficient are now forced to rely on increasingly scarce resources. The global supply chain, already stretched thin by economic instability and social unrest, faces further breakdowns as transportation routes are impacted by natural disasters and infrastructure collapses. In response to these crises, migration becomes inevitable. People flee regions devastated by fire, flood, and drought, seeking refuge in areas that have been less affected by the changing climate. Entire communities are displaced, often without any form of aid or support, as governments struggle to manage the swelling numbers of climate refugees. As borders tighten and nations prioritize their own citizens, refugees are often left stranded, with little to no access to basic necessities. The migration crisis fuels even more tension and conflict, as nations scramble to manage the influx of displaced people, and xenophobic sentiments rise in many regions. The political landscape becomes increasingly fractured, with countries unwilling to share resources or provide sanctuary to those fleeing climate-induced devastation. The devastation doesn't end with the loss of life and property. It is also a loss of culture and history. In many places, entire ways of life are destroyed, as communities that have existed for centuries are wiped off the map by the ravages of nature. Indigenous cultures, which have long lived in harmony with the environment, are forced to abandon their ancestral lands as these places become uninhabitable. These communities are left without homes, without history, and without a place to call their own, contributing to the ongoing erasure of ancient cultures in the wake of climate change. As the world continues to grapple with the cascading impacts of these climate disasters, the future becomes increasingly uncertain. What was once a distant concern for future generations is now a present-day reality, and the question is no longer whether we can reverse the damage, but whether we can survive the increasingly hostile environment we have created. The challenges are immense, but so too is the opportunity to act. How we respond to this crisis will shape the future of humanity, determining whether we can adapt and rebuild or whether we will continue down a path of destruction that may be too great to overcome. 5. Cyber attacks bring the world to its knees. As we move deeper into 2026, the digital infrastructure that has become the backbone of modern society is proving to be more vulnerable than ever before. The interconnectedness of the world, where our financial systems, power grids, healthcare systems, and even daily communications rely on the internet, has created a perfect storm for cyber criminals, state actors, and rogue organizations seeking to exploit these weaknesses. What was once a low-level threat is now escalating into full-scale warfare in cyberspace, with catastrophic consequences for everyday life. Coordinated cyber attacks, launched by skilled hackers and organized syndicates, target critical infrastructure and bring entire countries to a standstill. One of the most devastating moves is a simultaneous attack on financial systems, crippling stock exchanges and disrupting global trade. ATMs stop dispensing cash, leaving millions unable to access their money. Banks are forced to close, their digital systems compromised, and their clients left with frozen assets. With the global economy already teetering on the brink of collapse, this attack is the final blow to an already fragile financial system. In response, nations begin to impose restrictions on cash withdrawals, creating panic as citizens rush to hoard any physical currency they can. This leaves entire populations in limbo, unable to access funds, pay bills, or purchase necessities. The effects are felt immediately, as stores close, businesses halt operations, and the entire financial structure collapses into chaos. Simultaneously, power grids are brought offline, leaving cities plunged into darkness. The loss of electricity is widespread, affecting everything from hospitals to transportation networks to residential homes. In some places, power outages last for days, or even weeks, as engineers struggle to restore the system and locate the sources of the attacks. With energy demands already high due to the ongoing environmental crises, the loss of electricity sends shockwaves through the economy. Industries grind to a halt, essential services are interrupted, and people are left without access to heating, cooling, or light. The consequences of these blackouts are devastating. While those in rural areas may struggle with temporary inconveniences, the urban poor find themselves in life-threatening situations, trapped in a city with no resources and no way out. Healthcare systems are also targeted in these cyber attacks. Hospitals, already strained from the ongoing pandemic and the increasing demands of climate-related health issues, are overwhelmed by ransomware attacks and data breaches. Patient records are stolen or corrupted, and the disruption of medical services leads to delays in treatment, misdiagnoses, and, in some cases, unnecessary loss of life. The breach of medical systems triggers widespread panic, as patients and medical professionals alike scramble to secure life-saving information and resources. The medical community, already struggling to deal with previous disasters, is paralyzed by the attacks, unable to provide care to those in need. This adds yet another layer of fear and distrust in a society that is already reeling from global instability. The social fabric begins to unravel as digital communication platforms are hacked and taken offline. Social media, once a tool for connection, becomes a breeding ground for misinformation and chaos. With no reliable source of information, people turn to conspiracy theories and rumors, further amplifying the fear and uncertainty that already grips the population. Fake news spreads like wildfire, and trust in any authority, government, media, or experts dissipates into an overwhelming sense of distrust. The virtual world that once connected people across borders becomes a battleground for propaganda, manipulation, and confusion. Hackers pose as government officials, spreading disinformation about the causes of the attacks, pointing fingers at rival nations, and feeding an atmosphere of panic and suspicion. People question everything. Every news story, every public announcement, every message they receive. No one knows who is telling the truth, and paranoia reaches new heights. Nations respond to the cyber crisis by increasing their cyber defense capabilities, but it may be too little, too late. Governments pour billions of dollars into fortifying their digital infrastructure, developing cutting-edge cybersecurity tools, and creating offensive capabilities to strike back at the attackers. But the decentralized nature of cyber attacks makes it nearly impossible to trace their origin or even stop the perpetrators. In some cases, these attackers are so sophisticated that their tactics evolve faster than governments can react, outpacing traditional cybersecurity measures. As one system is protected, another becomes vulnerable. Governments begin to close borders, restricting digital communication and access to foreign websites in an attempt to regain control of their domestic networks. This increased censorship only adds fuel to the fire, as those living under oppressive regimes find ways to circumvent restrictions, creating an underground digital network of resistance. The world's reliance on digital systems becomes its greatest vulnerability. As the cyber attacks continue and escalate, the impact on daily life becomes more severe. People find themselves unable to communicate, access essential services, or even trust the information they receive. The attacks leave lasting scars, both on the physical infrastructure of nations and on the psychological well-being of the people who live in them. Trust, once foundational to the way societies functioned, is shattered. The digital age, which promised so much convenience, has now become a weapon, and the very tools that were once designed to unite the world have become instruments of division and destruction. In the aftermath of these cyber attacks, the world may find itself faced with a difficult question. What happens when our digital infrastructure collapses? In a world that depends on constant connectivity, how can society function when the systems that bind it together are destroyed? As the battle for cyberspace continues, humanity is forced to confront its vulnerability in the digital age, an age where trust is a rare commodity, and safety is constantly under siege. The question of whether we can ever truly secure our digital future will be one of the defining challenges of the coming decade. 6. A new pandemic strikes. Just as the world begins to recover from the economic turmoil and social unrest, a new, mutated virus emerges from the shadows, spreading faster and more silently than anyone could have anticipated. With healthcare systems already on their knees from previous strains of illness, this virus presents an even greater challenge. Unlike its predecessors, this new pathogen is not immediately recognized by medical professionals. It evades traditional detection methods, allowing it to spread undetected in the early stages. By the time health authorities realize the scope of the outbreak, it is already too late to contain it. Governments, slow to react, scramble to deploy resources in an attempt to prevent the virus from spiraling out of control. With hospitals already overburdened by previous crises, the strain on healthcare infrastructures becomes unbearable. Emergency rooms fill to capacity, with no room for those in need of urgent care. Intensive care units overflow, and there aren't enough ventilators to meet the demand. Healthcare workers, already exhausted from fighting the previous pandemic, are pushed to their limits, some of them becoming ill themselves, further depleting an already stretched workforce. The medical system collapses under the weight of this new viral threat, and the ripple effect is felt across every sector of society. Panic spreads faster than the virus itself, as people begin to question the efficacy of government responses. Trust in leaders erodes as promises of a quick resolution fall short. With no vaccine in sight and no clear treatment, people are left with uncertainty and fear. Some countries impose strict lockdowns, but public compliance is far from guaranteed. Many people, weary from the prolonged restrictions of the previous pandemic, reject the government's orders and refuse to stay inside, gathering in large crowds, defying social distancing measures, and exacerbating the spread of the disease. Others, gripped by fear, take drastic actions, hoarding supplies, fleeing cities, or even resorting to violence in order to protect themselves and their loved ones. The collective anxiety reaches a boiling point, and the social fabric of nations begins to unravel. This new pandemic is not just a public health crisis, it is a crisis of trust, governance, and social cohesion. The lack of effective leadership and clear communication creates widespread confusion, with conflicting messages coming from both governments and health organizations. Some people begin to distrust medical advice altogether, turning to alternative sources for information, while others blame foreign nations or specific social groups for the spread of the virus. Nationalistic sentiments rise, and borders are closed more aggressively, further isolating the global community and triggering diplomatic tensions. The toll of this new pandemic is felt most acutely in impoverished and marginalized communities. Those already struggling with economic hardship find themselves at a greater risk of infection due to overcrowded living conditions, inadequate access to healthcare, and lack of basic resources like food and clean water. In some areas, the pandemic exacerbates pre-existing inequalities, with the rich able to flee to remote locations, hoard medical supplies, and access private healthcare, while the poor remain trapped in cities ravaged by the disease. This growing divide sparks widespread outrage and resentment, as those who are left behind feel abandoned by their governments. Protests erupt in the streets, and calls for revolution grow louder. As the pandemic continues to spread, some nations take drastic measures, enforcing martial law to curb dissent and maintain order. While some populations accept these measures, others rebel, refusing to live under such oppressive conditions. A new form of civil disobedience emerges, as groups of people form underground networks to resist government-imposed restrictions, sharing resources and information in secret. These resistance movements, fueled by anger and frustration, challenge both the government's authority and the global health system, further dividing the world and making cooperation between nations all the more difficult. The economic impact of the pandemic is far-reaching. With businesses shuttering, unemployment rising, and global trade grinding to a halt, the world plunges deeper into a financial crisis. Governments are forced to implement emergency measures, offering financial support to the unemployed, providing temporary relief to businesses, and making drastic cuts to public services. But the measures fall short, as countries struggle to balance the economic fallout with the urgent need for healthcare interventions. As people lose their jobs and struggle to make ends meet, frustration and hopelessness become the dominant emotions of the time. This economic devastation only fuels the tensions that already exist between social classes, leading to further unrest and violence. In the midst of the pandemic's grip on the world, a new narrative begins to form. As governments struggle to contain the crisis, people start to look inward, questioning the assumptions that underpin their previous way of life. The pandemic forces many to confront the fragility of the global system and their own vulnerability in the face of such unprecedented challenges. The resilience of individuals and communities will be tested, as people are forced to adapt to the new reality of living in constant uncertainty. Some will find strength in unity and collective action, while others will succumb to fear and isolation. This new pandemic not only threatens public health, but also forces society to reckon with the deeper issues at play: inequality, corruption, and the breakdown of trust in institutions. It will leave a lasting legacy, reshaping the world for years to come. The question remains: how will we respond? Will we come together to rebuild a more resilient and equitable world? Or will we allow the chaos and division to pull us further apart? The answer lies in our collective ability to navigate the storm that is coming. *7. Rising threat of war. As the world continues to spiral into chaos, tensions between global superpowers begin to escalate to dangerous levels. Decades of fragile peace and complex diplomacy unravel as smaller, regional conflicts ignite and quickly spread. Countries that were once allies now view each other with suspicion, and alliances that had held the balance of power for generations are shattered. Political and economic instability only fuels these rising tensions, as nations seek to secure their own survival and expand their influence amidst the global turmoil. In the wake of economic collapse, many nations turn inward, focusing on their own survival rather than international cooperation. Nationalism surges to the forefront of global politics, as leaders begin to rally their citizens behind the idea that the strength and security of the nation must come above all else. This protectionist stance leads to the breakdown of international trade agreements, and countries begin stockpiling resources, further deepening the divide between them. It's not just the large powers that feel threatened. The smaller, resource-rich nations, now seen as pawns in the global chess game, are caught in the crossfire, their sovereignty undermined by aggressive foreign policies. The threat of war becomes more immediate as territorial disputes intensify. Resources such as water, energy, and agricultural land become increasingly scarce due to climate change and economic disruption. Nations begin to fight for control over dwindling resources, leading to territorial wars that disrupt not only regional stability but also global supply chains. These wars, fought over strategic locations and natural resources, threaten to draw in larger powers, leading to proxy wars and the increasing militarization of global conflicts. Small skirmishes break out along contested borders, but they are only the tip of the iceberg. As more nations engage in direct or indirect conflicts, tensions continue to mount. Espionage becomes the norm, as countries spy on one another, stealing intelligence, sabotaging operations, and manipulating political outcomes in an effort to gain an edge in this increasingly dangerous game. Cyber warfare escalates, as military forces launch digital strikes aimed at crippling enemy infrastructure, while misinformation campaigns spread chaos and distrust among populations. The very idea of trust between nations becomes a rare commodity. At the same time, nations begin to modernize and expand their military forces, acquiring advanced weapons systems and bolstering their defense capabilities. Countries rush to develop new technologies, including autonomous weapons, advanced drones, and artificial intelligence-driven combat systems, all of which make warfare more lethal and unpredictable. The military-industrial complex grows in power, as governments prioritize spending on defense while social services and economic recovery programs are neglected. The focus shifts from rebuilding nations after crises to preparing for an even bigger conflict on the horizon. With nuclear threats becoming a reality once again, the world finds itself on the brink of a new arms race. Countries fear that their rivals are gaining an upper hand in nuclear capabilities and rush to expand their own arsenals. The specter of a nuclear confrontation looms larger with every passing day, as the risk of miscalculation, misunderstanding, or accidental conflict grows. The fear of an all-out nuclear war becomes a constant undercurrent to political decision-making, and many nations adopt aggressive postures, willing to strike first to avoid being left behind. As war becomes increasingly likely, the global population lives in a constant state of fear and anxiety. Governments, scrambling to maintain control in the face of mounting protests and civil unrest, begin to implement harsher measures. Martial law is declared in multiple countries, and dissent is swiftly crushed. Mass surveillance becomes widespread, as governments use advanced technologies to monitor the movements, communications, and activities of their citizens. The idea of personal freedom begins to erode, as security concerns dominate every aspect of daily life. The rise of extremist groups and militias also contributes to the growing threat of war. These groups, often fueled by radical ideologies or extremist nationalism, seize power in weak states or unstable regions, turning them into breeding grounds for insurgencies and violent uprisings. The rise of terror groups and rogue states willing to challenge the global order only adds to the chaos, with threats of terrorism becoming an everyday concern. As the world slides into a state of permanent crisis, the boundaries between conventional warfare, terrorism, and civil unrest blur, making it harder for nations to distinguish between enemy forces and internal dissidents. Ultimately, the world faces a devastating question. What will the next conflict look like? Will it be a Cold War of cyber attacks and economic sanctions, or will it erupt into full-scale, devastating warfare, ravaging countries and economies across the globe? The lines between war and peace grow ever more uncertain, as the entire world teeters on the precipice of a global conflict unlike anything seen before. With nuclear weapons, cyber weapons, and biological threats on the table, the stakes are higher than ever, and the potential for destruction has never been greater. In this era of rising tensions and shifting alliances, the prospect of war casts a long shadow over the future. The question is no longer if war will come, but when and in what form. As nations continue to march toward confrontation, the world must brace itself for the worst, hoping that cooler heads will prevail before it's too late. But with each passing day, the path toward global conflict seems more inevitable, and the consequences more dire. As we look ahead to the world of 2026, it's clear that we're standing on the edge of a precipice, where uncertainty, fear, and tension threaten to reshape the global landscape. Whether it's the rise of uncontrollable AI, the looming financial collapse, political unrest, climate catastrophes, cyber warfare, pandemics, or the growing threat of war, the challenges we face seem overwhelming. These are not distant fears, they are becoming more immediate, and we must acknowledge the possibility that the world could look radically different in just a year's time. The question we must ask ourselves is simple, yet profound. How will we respond to these crises? Will we rise to the challenge, or will we falter in the face of adversity? The fate of the future lies in our collective actions, our ability to adapt, and our resolve to maintain peace, unity, and trust even as the world around us grows increasingly fractured. As individuals, as communities, and as nations, we must begin preparing today for the storm that may lie ahead. It is not too late to make a difference, but the window of opportunity is narrowing. We can still come together to tackle these challenges head-on, or we can allow the forces of chaos to tear us apart. The choice is ours, and it starts with the decisions we make now. Thank you for taking the time to explore these unsettling possibilities with me. If you found this discussion valuable or thought-provoking, don't forget to hit the like button and share this video with others who might need to hear this. Subscribe to Beyond Vision Mindset for more content that dives deep into the challenges of today and how we can navigate them with wisdom and resilience. Let's stay prepared, stay aware, and stay united, because the future depends on it. See you in the next video.